I'm going to turn this over to Reverend Michael so that we can have some prayer because we need it really bad. Yeah.
Let us pray. God eternal, from ages past, you have been our dwelling place. Even now we call upon you to be our dwelling place even the more. As we come, you ask that you would speak wisdom and open us that we might receive that you would have for us. We thank you for this gathering. We thank you for the minds and hearts that have gathered. And we pray that you would speak in this moment. We thank you now. In your name we do pray. Amen.
Amen. So everyone has an agenda. I am going to introduce, everyone is going to be speaking this evening. The moderator is Mrs. Tina Spencer Smith. Ms. Smith, can you please stand up and let everyone see who you are? And now our keynote speaker is Reverend Michael Malcolm. Our panelists are Shadi Abdul Salam, Monica Robinson, and Erica Pollin. And of course, I am your councilwoman for this district, Naima Gilliard. So Mrs. Spencer Smith is going to go over the meeting overview.
Good evening again, everyone. It is definitely a pleasure to see you here this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. I represent Georgia Interfaith Power and Light, and we are delighted to be able to collaborate with District 4, the City of South Fulton, on this community forum to inform you on the environmental concerns in your community. So we are going to actually go through some of the environmental stressors and concerns that are impacting your community. And Councilwoman Gilliard will walk through some actual footage, photographs, and pinpoint some of the locations. And it will not be all inclusive, but it will give you an idea of some of the concerns that are facing this area. We'll also have a keynote by Reverend Malcolm, and then we'll have a panel discussion by three dynamic experts in the field. And then we'll follow that up with a set of questions. And the goal here is to engage the community with conversation. This is about dialogue. I was at an event earlier this week, and in terms of the environment and climate change and impacts on health in our communities, we're not talking about it. And that's why we're here tonight, is to have that conversation. So we invite you into the conversation to discuss and ask the questions that are on your minds. And I ask you, as we go through this meeting, as you listen to the panelists, as you listen to the keynote, to think about what's at stake for you. What's at stake for you and your community? And then what will you do about it? So following the question and answer session, Councilwoman Gilliard will speak to you about policy and next steps. And so hopefully tonight, the goal is to inform you, and hopefully you will find some action items that would be meaningful that you can walk away and take away into the community. So, Councilwoman Gilliard.
So this is really important. And this is a quote from our Fulton County Commissioner that was just up there. A residential area where any part of its property line is 1/2 mile from an environmental adverse activity. So we know that we have a lot of that going on right now. And some of it has been going on for a long time, particularly in the areas where landfills exist. Not just one, but three. One is burning, of course, as a lot of people know, but there are three of them. And they are really in the middle or next to residential property. So what you're going to see next on the left-hand side is Hall Road, where a warehouse is being constructed. That warehouse is in Union City. You see, before we became a city, people thought that we were never going to be a city. And because we were unincorporated, we couldn't fight. So the city has the power to annex. And so Union City, that we are very close to, did an awful lot of annexing before we became a city. So that corner was originally in 2007, it was supposed to be South Fulton Crossing, and that was supposed to be a shopping center. It is now a warehouse. That's what's being constructed there. And that's on one side and on the other side of the street. And really, the awful part about this, more than anything, is that this warehouse is going to be before 3 Fulton County schools. Wilkerson Mill Road, we have people in the audience that live next to that. That was the first one that was constructed. Not only was it the first one constructed, but on that site, there will be 3.8 million square feet of warehouse space. If you drive down there and look at it, it's unbelievable how much land it's going to take up. And so I was just talking to someone today who lives in the subdivision next to it, who was telling me that they're blasting now, and her house was shaking, literally shaking. Derrick Road and South Fulton Parkway, right in the back of High Grove subdivision, building another warehouse, over 500 and something square feet. Mason Road is behind Creekside on Scarborough Road, and the Parkway Village, and this is interesting, the Parkway Village subdivision that's in Union City. And so that warehouse is unbelievably huge, huge, another one of millions of square feet. So that's all the pictures that we have of 4 of them. There are 2 additional ones. One is going to be on this street down by South Fulton Parkway and Stonewall Tell Road. That's coming up shortly. And another one is going to be built on Highway 92 on the other side of South Fulton Parkway, across from the Hall Road one. So we are being inundated with environmental issues. Everybody knows what that is. That picture was taken some time ago. That was what it looked like then, and it doesn't look much better right now. And we're going into 6 months of this nonsense, and that's exactly what it is, nonsense. Because we keep going around and around and around in a circle. And it's going to continue if we don't stand up. Because we talk about it, and we talk about, oh, now the owner has until May 20th to put the fire out. And it is a fire that is unusual, that takes a particular expertise to put it out. And as long as someone tries to put it out and don't know what they're doing, all they're doing is stirring up smoke and more smoke. that was the landfill. And there's more pictures of the landfill. I have so many pictures of this. This is unbelievable. But anyway, I just wanted to open up with environmental stressors and to have folks that are here, panelists that are here, to talk about what environmental stressors really are and how they impact us. So I'm going to turn it over to the moderator so that she can take it.
Thank you, Councilwoman. We'll move into the address by our keynote, Reverend Malcolm.
We have a problem. It's apparent that we have a problem, and not only do we have a problem, but we've got multiple problems. But something tells me that we can move from a problem to a praise. I must tell you that out from the outset, I am a preacher. Not only am I a preacher, but I'm a native of Georgia. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, born and raised. Zone 6 is where I'm from, and Zone 6 is what I represent. For all the degrees I might have and all the accolades I might get, I'm still the down-home boy from Georgia. That being said, this problem is not a problem that I hadn't seen wherever I've gone throughout the southeast of the United States of America. The reality is certain segments of people, certain demographics are under attack. It's not something that hadn't been done or is just recent, but this is something that's long-standing and has been going on for a long time. At this point, I'm at the point where I'm starting to ask myself, and I can ask you even now because I hear you asking the question, who is he? I'm simply here to ask you a question. What are we going to do about it? We have gotten to a point where we've asked our government to do something. But the reality is our government is part of the reason why we're in this problem in the first place. What are we going to do about it? We have asked the industries to stop poisoning and stop polluting, and we've asked them to stop attacking and stop doing slow violence in our communities, but nothing has changed. So what are we going to do about it? And I'm reminded of the story of Ezekiel, when Ezekiel goes and he's led to a valley of dry bones. And the Spirit tells Ezekiel to speak to the bones. My brothers and my sisters, I must tell you that we are standing in the midst of a valley of dry bones. As a society, we are in the midst of a valley of dry bones. As a people, we are in the midst of a valley of dry bones. As generations, we are in the midst of a valley of dry bones. The question is, will you use the tool that you have to address the dry bones that lay before you? These dry bones that lay before you have sat stagnant, have sat still, and have demised communities forever and a day. These dry bones didn't care about you when they laid there, and they don't care about you now. So what are you going to do? Are you going to continue to allow the stench of these dry bones to lay in front of you, or will you use the tool that you have that has been given to you, and that tool is your voice? If there's nothing else that we can do, we can raise our voice. You might not be able to get out and march, but you can say something. You might not be able to get out and pump your fist in the air and wave your hands like you just don't care, but you can say something. The reality is, my brothers and my sisters, we've got to say something, but you cannot speak in an individual voice. You must speak to collectively as a whole in order for us to make the strongest impact. Those who are on this side who don't look like those that are on that side, and those that are on that side that don't look like those that are on that side, have got to join hands. And here's the reason why you've got to join hands and lift your voice together. The reason why you want to do it is because you're suffering the same way. Once we find out that our common ground is that of suffering, we'll get together and we will do something about it. It has nothing to do with the skin color. It has nothing to do with your zip code. It has nothing to do with what side of the track your house might land on. The fact of the matter is, everybody suffers under this smoke. Everybody suffers under the loud noises from the planes and the trains and automobiles. Everybody suffers because of the pollution and the degradation that industry brings to our community. So, again, I must ask you the question on today. What are you going to do about it? Will you continue to raise your voice, continue to complain and sit there and do nothing? Or will you actually raise your voice and put movement behind your put movement behind your mouth and get out there and do something? Today is the day that you get to decide what you are going to do about it. Will you organize? Will you come together? Will you finally say, enough is enough? I'm reminded of a story of a young man who had gone to college. And he'd gone to college, and I think I've told this story before, but it's so entertaining, I think I'll tell it again. He went to college, and he learned all these multi-syllable words, and he came back and he was very educated, and he had gotten what he would think was reformed, and he went back to his friends that were in the country, and when he went back to his friends that were in the country, he began to talk to them. He asked them, do you want to go to the pond and have a swim? And they didn't understand what he had to say, and they looked crazy. He said, do you want to go to the pond and have a swim? And finally he said, you want to go down to the pond and go swimming? And so they went on down to the pond and went swimming. And they were swimming. And as they were swimming, this young man got himself in a little trouble. And when he got himself in a little trouble, he came up and he said, excuse me, pardon me, assistance, please. And the boys just kept on swimming, and everybody's screaming, and everybody's making noise. And he goes down the second time, and he says, excuse me, pardon me, assistance, please. And the boys kept on swimming. They didn't pay him any mind. And so he goes down for the third time, and he can barely catch his breath. And he comes back up, and he says, help! And finally, he got him some help. And my brothers and my sisters, I need to tell each and every one of you all, as I end my little speech, I need to tell each and every one of you all that every now and then we've got to dispense with the niceties. We've got to dispense with the political correctness. We've got to dispense with whatever society has mandated that we're supposed to live our lives by. And we've got to raise our voices together and say, help! Because we need some help. We can't breathe. We need help. We need some help. We can't sleep at night because of the loud noises and the lights. We need some help. Every now and then, you just got to let it out. Help! And you've got to say this until somebody comes along and hears your cry. I'm reminded of children and how babies and how precious they are. At least that's what we're told till we have a few of them and have to take care of them. And we start changing our minds on how we look at babies. But a child, when they are hungry, when they need to be changed, when they are diseased, they cry. And no matter how much you tell them to be quiet, they get all the more louder. And you can tell them hush, they get louder. You can tell them to go sit in the corner and take a time out, they get louder. Because they understand the louder I get, eventually somebody's going to have to see about my problem. Help! Embarrass yourself if you have to.
Help!
Let somebody know you need help. And that's all I want to tell you. Now is the time for us to raise our voices together and let the world know that we need
Help. We need help. Thank you, Reverend Malcolm. We need to band our collective voices together and ask for help. We're going to move into our panelist segment. So we will move into our panel and we'll start with Dr. Erica.
So it's good to, number one, be back home. And that's important because as we educate our young people, we have to instill in them the desire to come back home to address and help with very much these issues. And so as Reverend Malcolm was mentioning to you all about help, what better help to get than the tools and information by which you can help yourself. So you can stop right there. So the toxic release inventory is a tool that was actually created out of the Federal Right to Know Act. So out of the environmental justice movement, people started demanding to know what is in my backyard and started to hold the federal government accountable for being able to present that information, because most of this industry have to report, number one, to EPA, and then number two, to the state. And so EPA at the federal level is a tool that allows us to sort of come from the top down in order to have our states then have to be into compliance. Because if an industry is out of compliance, not only do they have to report to the state, but then they also have to report to the feds. And for us and what we're talking about, that is EPA, which is currently under attack right now, but I still believe we have good people in place to make sure that the things don't happen. So the Toxic Release Inventory is a website designed to give you information about the majority of industry that pollutes in your community. From this, you're able to get their most current compliance report. If they have been out of compliance, you can find out information regarding when they were out of compliance, what they were out of compliance for. Through this website, you can also get down to the specific information about what chemicals or toxic things are actually being released into the environment and how they're being released, meaning, is it to the air, is it to the water, and is it to the land? And so this becomes a very powerful tool as you all, as Reverend Malcolm says, join together in that voice with regards to being able to say, help, but help with an informed voice. So oftentimes our communities get overlooked because we don't speak the same language as the scientists do. However, when you start speaking their language as well as saying and speaking from an informed position, these are the places where you can get that knowledge such that you all can come together in a very stronger voice to address your issues. And so you can do a simple Google search for the Toxic Release Inventory website, and it'll probably take you some time to just go through the website and figure out how to get to it. It is rather user-friendly. But again, this is one of your first defenses to, number one, figure out who is polluting in my community, what are they polluting, have they ever been in or out of compliance, how long have they been operating, and what are some of the current issues or trends. And so this becomes, again, a very important tool. I wanted to give you all today, more so than the scientific jargon of what the environmental stressors are, actual tools through which you can educate yourselves in your own time, because this is what's most important. So this is one of them. The second one is also an EPA tool, which is known as the EJ Screen. And this is the new tool that EPA, along with lots of other community members, have worked to revamp. And what this does is it gives you an opportunity to combine several different factors. So some of these demographic factors, such as age, minority populations, vulnerable populations, and then overlap that information with environmental stressor data. And what it does is it really highlights then where your hot spots may potentially be based on your social vulnerable populations and its proximity to the variety of sources of pollutants that may be there. So again, EJ screen, as well as the toxic release inventory become tools that you all can use at your own disposal in which to gain a lot more information that is available publicly. And I also wanted to give another tool. It's not there, but it's the Freedom of Information Act. You have a right to know. And oftentimes, big industry will have us to submit Freedom of Information Act requests in order to get that information. These tools as well can help you to set forth that information needed to put forth that type of request such that you can get the information that they may not normally just give to you, but you still have a right legally to have. The last thing that I really wanted to stress was two things. The point about how myself and others in the environmental justice community have come to define for us what environment means. So oftentimes, when we talk about environment, we think of just the natural environment, right? Which is the pollutants, the air, the water. But we also live in whole communities. And so what we understand is, yes, we have the natural environment, but we also have a social environment. We also have a cultural environment. We also have a political environment, as well as an economic environment. And so collectively, all 5 of these environments for us make up what we talk about with regards to environmental justice. So as community members, we often understand that one has an impact on the other. So if we're talking about the violence in our communities, then how is that potentially linked to early exposure to lead, where scientists now understand that pre-adolescent exposure to lead can tend to have violent post-adolescent behaviors? So really, what are we looking at? Is it really young people going crazy, or some young people that have been exposed to toxic heavy metals at a pre-adolescent age? And so these are the types of things that I wanted to make sure that you at least walked away with. Number one, you're not crazy. Number two, you understand that like your body doesn't segment things. So when you're breathing in air, not only is it air, it's any other pollutant that may be in there, and your body is not going to separate it into all the silos that scientists like to break it out. And so we're understanding now the importance of cumulative risk assessment, meaning don't talk about my exposure to just one contaminant when I'm breathing in multiple contaminants. Have me to understand what the collective cumulative effect of all of these things, some of which may be natural, then some of which may be cultural, social, economic, or as well political, because oftentimes these backdoor decisions about where these places and industries get placed happen in backdoor conversations that is definitely connected to the political will. And so again, for you all in this fight to, number one, remain engaged with one another, work together across lines, across race, of which we know is a non-biological factor. And more importantly, in this day and age where your zip code is more of a predictor of your health outcome than your genetic code, I'm gonna say that again. In this day and age now, your zip code is more of a determining factor of your health outcome than your genetic, God-given makeup. And again, that is more so associated with those other 4 components of the environment that we talk about as we talk about social determinants of health. And so with that, please know that we are here together. I work for the West Atlanta Watershed Alliance. It is a nonprofit that stewards the Outdoor Activity Center located in Atlanta, Southwest Atlanta. Here's an example, again, of zip code dictating your health outcome. So in my zip code 30310, the life expectancy of residents there is 10 to 15 years lower than residents from Buckhead. 10 to 15 years lower than residents in Buckhead. Why? Because of these social determinants. So as we educate and inform ourselves not only about the natural and the toxic pollutants that exist, we also have to then get engaged in these other environments, the political environment, the social environment, the economic environment, as well as the cultural environment. And again, I thank you for this opportunity. These are definitely two websites I suggest that you all use in your fight. And one last thing with regards to the burning of the landfill. You all see smoke. I see all of the pollutants. Most importantly, like dioxin, which occurs from the burning of plastics and other things that may be in that landfill. And again, in this one planet, which is a closed system, which means that there's nothing that you can do on this planet, regardless of where you are, that won't have an impact on somebody. Last I checked, I didn't see any glass barriers in the sky or ceilings stopping things from blowing from one community when that wind blows from west to east to blow it over to somebody else's community. And so again, please use these websites as part of your arsenal in informing yourself about what is in my backyard, because you too have a right to know. Thank you.
Good evening. That was tremendous. As I'm a tree hugger, don't let the soup fool you. My name is Shadid Abdul Salam. I worked as a public health researcher for Center for Disease Control for nearly a decade. And when I listen to the presenters, and I think about the issue, it makes me reflect on what Reverend Michael said, which is you must agitate and you must make noise. Prior to the session, Monica and I, we were talking, and we were speaking about how sometimes we don't know how to advocate for ourselves because we've been in the same situation for so long. And the way that politics and policy works is that you must promulgate or make noise, prime the pump, get things ready, complain, in order for people to hear you. So we've had discussions over several years, myself and Councilwoman Gilliard, about how do we get the information out. This is not necessarily just the City of South Fulton thing. As Dr. Holland said, this is an overall collective thing. We know the story of Union City and their annexation. That's not where their population is, that's where the City of South Fulton's population lies. So what can we do is the question. And I think our goal is to try to give some tools around those areas. And in agitating, we may all in this room have to write a letter. Are we willing to write a letter? And have this letter directly speaking to the things that impact us, the why. And so as I was preparing for this, and we all got a chance to dialogue a few times prior to, and the key piece to me is looking at the why. And the why part of this discussion is the number one thing that connects to people is health. It's about our quality of life, right? So our health, our quality of life, we are taxpayers. We have our homes, our home values, property values, all this stuff is connected. We have the schools and the children and what they're exposed to. If you look up and down the county, Fulton County, which is very long, one of the largest counties in Georgia, you'll see disparities in terms of educational performance that will go right along the same line from north to south as economics go, as well as health indices, as well as life expectancies. And so when we look at choosing our leaders, we have to make sure that the public is informed so that we have someone who's concerned with our overall health and well-being. So overall health and well-being is the general definition of public health. It deals with our social, our physical, our mental, our built environment, our natural environment, and all these things in concert. The city is concerned, they want business and economics. We won't be able to attract the business and economics that we want if we have truck stops. If you have warehouses, 18-wheelers are coming. If you have 18-wheelers, they need diesel fuel. Diesel fuel produces particulate matter, dioxins, all these class 1 carcinogens. And you think about what that does to the will of the people, the spirit of the people. Property values go down. They're gentrifying the city. Whereas before there were urban problems, there are what we call suburban problems now in all the major cities around the country. So, the spirit of the people. If we want excellence in our city, the law of attraction is we have to create and produce excellence. We have to gather excellent hearts and the excellent minds of the people. The hearts are critical. Your heart has to be in the right place. This academia is okay, but you have to be sincere. So I think about we have to have a strong collective identity. And as Dr. Hamlin was talking, I was thinking about all of the dynamic things that come into play that have an impact on our health. While I was at Emory, which has been decades plus ago, a new discussion of environmental medicine and epigenetics came up. So this word epigenetics, give you the layman's term of what epigenetics are. That is, things that you're exposed to in the environment. For example, if you're exposed to smoke or exhaust from, say, the dog food plant, or the railroad tracks, or the intermodal, or the burning landfill, what genes within your body are turned on or off based upon that environmental exposure, combined with the fact of what sort of intake that you're dealing with anyway, and your genetic predispositions. So you may have had people in your family that may have suffered from certain health issues. But that on top of the fact that there's some environmental toxins will then heighten this impact. So this is the discussion of epigenetics. Before, in the 70s, they laughed at it. Now, with Emory research and government research, they say, wow, this is why we have a high incidence of lung cancer, non-smoking related lung cancers. This is why we can pinpoint and look at all of these issues that are having a strong impact on this community. And so, I wrote down a list of just different environmental stressors, but what we're talking about is air, land, and water. All of these things are ubiquitous. We share them. There's going to be no more water produced on the planet. The same water we have now, the same water that's been used for millions and millions of years, is just cycling itself over and over again. We have to be conscious, especially in our rural areas, of individuals who tap into our wells and people who leak and leaching from these such landfills. We have 3 landfills in our area, 2 which will probably become future EPA Superfund sites. Also, a lot of you all who are from the area, we have a fiberglass, former fiberglass manufacturing facility right here. We have an airport, which there are research studies, and I didn't want to inundate you with, but airports, people who live near airports is associated with increased cardiovascular events or heart attacks. These are things that we can point to and we can point the data to, but we just need to complain. We need to write. Landfills associated with health impacts. Warehouses, truck stops. So I just want us to be able to consciously complain. And I want you all to know that we're here as a resource, and I live in the community. I'm here. We're here. And there are going to be other forums that people may put on about the environment. It's exciting for them to say, hey, listen, the environment is bad. This is what we're going to do. We need to see conscious action. And it's nonpartisan, the environment. Our health is nonpartisan. So therefore, if people want to go ahead and say, hey, this is what we're going to talk about. Okay, good. Let's come to the table together and let's set a timeline so that we can draft something to say no more truck stops, no more warehouses. So let's be active. let's be vigilant and conscious. And I felt like it's divine intervention that today's date is 4/11. So for all of us older people, I guess, 411 is what we dial for information. Right? They don't do it anymore, I don't think. I haven't touched it. 411. 411 is for information. This is what we, directory assistance, and we need assistance, and we need to bring about conscious action and purge and press our leadership. And I thank God for Councilwoman Gilliard, that we have to make sure these seats here are all informed. She's just one piece to this puzzle, and we want to continue to support. And, you know, please agitate and write a letter. Give our councilwoman some help and help our city. Thank you all.
Good evening. Good evening. Again, my name is Monica Robinson, and I'm with Fulton County Board of Health. And how are you all this evening? Great, excellent. Well, you've heard about the tools that you all can use from EPA websites, and you've heard about the public health perspective from an overarching view. And so at this time, I'd like to talk to you about environmental justice. Now, of course, this is not going to be, you're going to leave here with everything you need to know. So this is just to give you a little bit of tools, and it's actually going to tie together what already has been spoken about. And so, first of all, what is environmental justice? I'm going to use the EPA's definition. As you see, it's the fair and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. Have we heard that tonight already several times? Yes, we have. And so environmental justice sits right there in the middle. It involves economics, our social aspects, health, public health, environment, public participation, health. I need help. We need your public participation. Access to information. Have you all heard of Freedom of Information Act? You have the right to know. Any government entity, you can write in and ask for information on any document. You have the right to know. So, one important thing to the fair and meaningful involvement, and that's the part that I want to kind of focus on, because as you move into the next phase of action, that collaboration and information sharing is very important. Getting to know information from your neighbors is important. Getting information from government entities is important. Even from the academic community is important, as well as the business community. So it takes everybody to get the information, and you share the information and use that information to voice what needs to be said and to share your concerns. So as Dr. Holloman talked about, is about the jargon that's used in certain entities. Because environmental justice crosses over into so many different areas, it's going to be a learning process maybe. Some of you may be more well-versed in certain areas as opposed to others. But for instance, sometimes you'll hear people say environmental health and environmental justice interchangeably. They are not the same thing. When we talk about environmental health, for example, it is a branch of public health, and as it is with the Board of Health, with public health, it concerns all facets of natural and built environment. We've heard that again tonight, right? So understanding that it has to do with things such as those things that touch you as far as businesses like restaurants, those things like wells, septic systems, those kind of things that affect your life as you're living your daily lives, any type of unsanitary environmental conditions. On the other hand, environmental justice is a movement, it's a belief, your desire to want to see something happen. While we may not necessarily know the specifics, and we're not, again, inundating you with a lot of particulars on things or a lot of scientific data, but inherently, all of us as humans, we know when something's wrong. We know when something needs to be said or done, but we can't get complacent. Just like we've had the call to write a letter. Sometimes it may just be a phone call to your local politicians, your state, or your even your federal politicians, because your EPA, to the directors of these departments, inundating them with letters, phone calls. What are we calling for? Help. Also, it includes community input, meaningful involvement. Your voice is required. We've heard this over and over again. Environmental Justice Corps involves you. It involves people. In order for things to move, it takes you for healthier outcomes and to be fair for everybody across all types of lines. Also, it addresses disproportionate burdens placed on and benefit gains by vulnerable communities. And when, historically, when we talked about vulnerable communities, a lot of times we talk about low income versus the higher income, or along racial lines. But actually, vulnerable communities, there are certain things that affect us, affect our health more in the senior population than it does, say, in a younger population. Our children are more susceptible to certain things than the older population. So there are other things besides racial lines or economic lines that are important to addressing environmental concerns. Also learning the language. Individual health versus community health. As you begin to have these conversations, when we're talking about individual health, there are so many different things that go into that. So again, I'm not trying to necessarily give you all that now, but I'm just trying to give you an example. So when we're talking about individual health, there are things about how much you're exposed. We've heard a little bit about your genetic makeup. All those kind of things go into individual outcomes, health outcomes. But when we're talking about us as a community, we're talking about health impacts, the population as a whole. What are you exposed to? What is in your community? What are the stressors that are affecting you day in and day out? What are those things that are affecting your mental health? Just the way the community looks affects our mental health. It's been proven, things that you see in your community over and over and over again, it affects the mental health. And mental health is a big part of our physical health as well. So the main thing that I want to drive home is that involvement is our priority. It's for all of us. And so when we talk about environmental justice and all the stressors that are in this neighborhood, it's going to take finding out who's in the community. As it was said, we're here. I live in this community. There are people in the community that meet all these things. There are people here that are business people in the community that understand the jargon of business. There are people here in the community that understand public health. We have doctors in the community. We have students in the community. We have people that go to universities here that can help with the research and help. So it's going to take one person. It takes all of us, and it lightens the load. And so it takes your voice. And all of us want to be healthy, right? All of us want our future children to be healthy as they grow up, grandchildren to be healthy. And so it just takes just this. Again, if you could write a letter, contact people. For instance, we either forget or we just don't know who we have at access. A lot of times people forget that they have an advocate with the Board of Health to seek knowledge as it relates to certain things. To provide guidance, like with Fulton County Board of Health, we have the Environmental Justice Program, which is part of what I do, to connect people with the right entities and the right people to move their purpose, to get to where you want to be. And so I'll stop there because to give time for a panel discussion, but the key point I want you to take away is that it's not just one person and one voice. Begin to seek out, begin to learn about who is at the table, who is responsible. Just like with the landfill, and we talk in your packet, it talks about EPD and the court system. But EPD carries out the laws and the enforcement of what US EPA requires. So have we gone to EPA? Have we included all the people that could possibly influence the situation on all of these issues? So I encourage you to not only speak out, begin to talk to your neighbors and seek out the expertise that's already in the community and move the agenda forward. Thank you.
What a wonderful panel. A lot of great information. I wanted to ask, I don't want to take up too much time because I do want to hear from you. We want to take your questions. But we did hear a thread of commonality that has run through each of the speakers tonight, and that is, it's starting with Reverend Malcolm, that is your voice. And, you know, consciously complain, make noise. And they've given you tools to use. I do want to ask them, what do you see as, and specifically as it relates to the city of South Fulton and some of the issues that they're facing, what are the biggest challenges that the community is facing in terms of environment?
My grandmother taught me, you can't do what you don't know. And the biggest barrier I have found, community after community after community, is lack of knowledge. Which is why I wanted to give you tools through which you can find out for yourself. And even in the process of finding out for yourself, that process deepens really your understanding and probably will piss you off a little bit and fuel that energy needed to say to your neighbor, hey, I just found this out. Did you know? And oftentimes what we found is it starts with one community member who didn't know, took it upon themselves to find out, was blown away, and had to tell somebody. And then just like a spark or chain reaction, the information and knowledge can be passed very quickly. And I'm a mother of 4 young boys, and I do a lot of youth environmental education work. And one of the most important things for us is peer-to-peer education and interaction. We are our best teachers, and sometimes it's easier for us to understand it coming from our own peers than either top down or someone from bottom up. Case in point, I have my oldest son tell his little brother what to do because they will listen a little bit more. And so I say that to you as well. Don't doubt your own knowledge. Find the confidence, and most importantly, what happens when you start speaking to one another, you realize I am not alone. Even in my lack of knowing, I'm not alone, which is okay, because sometimes when you start getting the information, it becomes very overwhelming and scary and like, oh my goodness, what? And then you find out, hey, I'm not alone. And it makes you feel a little bit more better. And we have to find these small places and spaces to recharge ourselves, because this is tiring work. This work has been going on for a certain population since we've been here, and will continue the way things seem to be going. But I believe that we have an opportunity here in the South, in the last colony of this great nation, to do something different. To work together, to live together, to play together in an equitable way, such that our most socially vulnerable populations are able to rise with our most strongest populations.
I would agree with Dr. Holloman on the lack of knowledge being a major challenge within the community. And along with that, without the knowledge, that sometimes we become complacent, as you had mentioned earlier, is that we get used to seeing things, or because it's historically there, we think it's okay, and that's just the way it is. Nothing's going to change. Or maybe we have tried to voice our opinions before and maybe didn't get the door knocked down, and we just give up. And so I think part of it too is a lack of vision. I think once we get our hope and our vision for what we want our community to be, then we have something to move forward to. Instead of just looking at things as they are. I'm sure some of you have heard, without a vision, the people perish. And we're not trying to perish. We're trying to move forward and live and have healthier outcomes. And so I think that's the biggest challenge, is reframing our thoughts and our words, reframing what we think about and how we see our communities, and then once we have that vision, getting the knowledge to be able to move towards that vision and make that change, and not accepting what exists.
First, I want to apologize. I'm going to have to step out early. I have a prior engagement. But addressing this, what is the biggest challenge that we see facing us as a city? It's informational first. That's why this has to be a series of things. And it being informational, meaning we need a map, which we have, we spoke about, and you put what we call overlays over top of the map. These overlays identify where the train tracks are, where the streets are. They identify where the truck stops are, where the intermodal is located. They identify where the warehouses are, and then identify where the schools are. Then there's a technology that you can use called GIS, Geographical Information Systems, where you can go and type in neighborhood. It's now down to a neighborhood level. You can now look at population, age of that population. You can also look at health of that population. And so once we start to narrow and key down this picture for our citizens, so the citizens know, we have to know what's wrong first, right? Then we have to put other things in place. And that can be soil tests. So now we're going to do soil tests for some specific things that are sensitive, like PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls, in water and land. Also, well tests, making sure the city utilizes their budget, or we get some supplements from the environmental divisions to do well tests in all of our areas, our rural areas, to make sure that our well water is sound. Then also test our water coming from the city of Atlanta. So these are some things, some action items that we can do. But first, from an informational standpoint, we need to identify a lot of these different items. And then as neighbors and as citizens, you need to also identify things. Well, hey, this right here used to be an old abandoned car. You know, they used to have 100 cars here. Then they just moved it and they put warehouses. So what that means is that there may be some fluids that are in the ground. This used to be an old dry cleaners back in the day. So then there's also some toxins in place. Or well, this train track carried munitions from Benning, Fort Benning to here. So then we can test for perchlorate, which are some persistent items that are endocrine disruptors of people who are having hormonal issues and hormone replacement or thyroid issues. So we're here to be a tool, but it starts off from an informational standpoint. So I think in terms of us having the opportunity to inform the leaders, but first informing the people, but we need to have resources to put in place, and we need you all to complain. Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you so much.
I just want to say one thing, and as it relates to what we're talking about right now, that what everyone has said is the purpose of this meeting. Because I cannot do this by myself. And while I'm supposed to be limited because I'm an elected official, I live here, and I'm not a politician. So there's a big difference. And you hear me say that over and over again. So we're going to become educated. We're going to become organized. And enough is enough. I just want to say that.
Thank you.